Today, we're diving into a story that's literally woven into the fabric of American history. It's about one of the most creative and, frankly, one of the most powerful forms of activism in the fight for freedom. So think about it. This was the huge question for so many Americans back in the 19th century who knew slavery had to end. When all the official doors are slammed shut, how do you make people listen? How do you actually create change? Okay, let's get into it.
To really get why their solution was so brilliant, we first have to understand the sheer size of the mountain they had to climb.
I mean, slavery wasn't just some bad idea. It was a system. It was baked into the economy and protected by the law. So the abolitionists weren't just fighting against an opinion. They were fighting against the entire establishment. And to do that, they needed two things, desperately: money and a way to change public opinion.
So, facing this absolutely monumental task, they came up with an ingenious strategy. They turned simple community gatherings into, well, engines for a revolution.
They were called anti-slavery fairs, or abolitionist bazaars. And listen, these were not your average bake sales, not by a long shot. They were these big multi-day events with a fantastic two-for-one punch: raise money and raise awareness. They became the absolute lifeblood of the movement.
And the model itself, so simple, it was genius. It was a total grassroots operation. People, and it was mostly women, would make all sorts of goods and donate them. Then, organizers would put on this big public fair. And the result was this powerful combo of cash for the cause and a huge PR campaign against slavery.
All right, so let's imagine we're stepping back in time, walking right into one of these bazaars. What would you actually see, and why was it so much more than just a place to buy things? The variety was just incredible. You'd see tables piled high with beautiful handmade quilts, clothing, jewelry, you name it. And get this, you'd even find fancy imported goods from supporters all the way over in Europe. Now that sent a really powerful message. The world is watching, and the fight against slavery has allies across the ocean.
And this is the absolute key. Every single thing sold was, yes, a transaction, but it was also a protest. When you bought a little embroidered handkerchief, you weren't just getting a handkerchief. You were literally funding the resistance. The whole place was transformed from a market into a political arena.
And this is where the education part really came alive. Right alongside the homemade jams and quilts, you'd find abolitionist literature everywhere. You could grab a copy of a newspaper like The Liberator or read pamphlets with first-hand accounts from people who had escaped slavery. This was a direct, in-your-face effort to inform people and recruit them to the cause, right there in the middle of the marketplace.
So who were the masterminds behind all this? Who was making this all happen? Well, the answer reveals the true hidden powerhouse of the entire abolitionist movement.
You have to appreciate the incredible paradox here. On one hand, women were totally shut out of formal politics. They couldn't vote, couldn't hold office, couldn't even really speak in public. But on the other hand, through these fairs, they carved out their own massive sphere of influence. They were managing huge events, controlling big budgets, and directly shaping public opinion on the biggest issue of the day.
And make no mistake, this was not random. This was highly organized. Groups like the Boston Female Anti-Slavery Society were strategic, disciplined, and incredibly good at what they did. They were the CEOs, the event planners, and the marketing gurus of this entire enterprise, proving you don't need a ballot box to wield real political power.
So what was the end game? What was the ultimate impact of all this work? Well, the effects rippled out for decades and really did change the course of American history.
First, let's just talk about the money. The financial impact was huge. An event like the famous Boston Anti-Slavery Bazaar could raise thousands and thousands of dollars, and back then, that was an absolute fortune. This was the cash that fueled the movement. It paid for speakers, it kept the abolitionist newspapers printing, and it funded the big organizations.
But the legacy went so much deeper than just fundraising. The women who organized these bazaars became seasoned, expert activists. So after the Civil War ended, many of these same leaders who now had decades of experience just pivoted. They took the exact skills they had perfected fighting slavery and applied them to the next great fight, the women's suffrage movement. And that, right there, is the enduring lesson of the Anti-Slavery Bazaar. It was a masterclass in how regular people can drive change. It proved, without a doubt, that even when the system denies you a voice, you can build one for yourself with creativity, community, and a whole lot of hard work.
Which kind of brings us to a final thought. The abolitionist bazaar was the perfect solution for its time. And it really makes you wonder, what are the modern versions of this? In our world today, what are the creative, unexpected, and powerful ways that ordinary people are organizing to make sure their voices are heard?